Live streaming is on.
Okay, guys, I'm going to get started here in maybe about a minute. I got on a little bit early, so I'll give some people some time to come in if you're on with us. Okay, you guys, today's lesson, we're going to focus on, we did this in class, kind of how we formed our country. So most of the original 13 colonies, people came from England and Europe, and we talked about a lot of them came for like a chance for better economics. Some came for religious freedom. The thing was, all the colonies, in case you didn't know, were English colonies, so they were still run by the King of England. And this talks a little bit, gives you a little bit background why eventually we had the Revolutionary War and why we formed our own country. Okay, so you can see Patrick Henry says, "Give me liberty or give me death." That was a famous quote. So the colonies eventually wanted freedom from England, and we're going to cover some of the reasons why. So it says, really, was it that bad? By 1776, the American colonists were living under English rule, thought so. In fact, things were so bad that they went to war to gain their independence. But why? What could have been so intolerable, or what could have been so bad? It says the first Englishmen came to America 400 years ago looking for gold, silver, and a waterway to Asia. They were part of a trading company that convinced the King of England to grant them a charter, giving them permission to set up a colony in America. But they did not find what they were looking for. Times got so hard, those first settlers had to eat rats and even each other to keep from starving to death. Pretty soon, though, more people arrived and times got better, and the English were here to stay. Okay, back in England, the king probably figured he had a pretty good deal. Other people got seasick sailing across the ocean to settle on untamed land while he sat in the palace ruling England. Except that being king just wasn't what it was used to be. Back in the 1200s, a king can do really what he wanted, but this was the 1600s, and now the English people had representation, parliament. And parliament would be what our Congress is, who made laws and stood up for people's rights. They even gave advice to the king, and you can see the king saying, bah, you know. So then it says, govern ourselves. Don't govern ourselves, do you? In America, the colony has some kind of government deal with the everyday problems. After all, the king was on the other side of the ocean, and because of Parliament, the colonists were used to having a say in government. In the Virginia colony, the first settlers decided each community should have 2 representatives, that all the representatives would meet together. Further north in Plymouth, Mass., the colonists signed a compact agreeing to form majority rule government, where all the men would vote on whatever issues came up. Women didn't get to vote until 1620 in the colonies. As you guys know, it was much later once we formed our country. Even so, the king still controlled the colonies, and colonists had to follow English laws. And you can see in this little diagram right here, these are the original 13 colonies. Okay, so this was the start of our country. There were each colonies, and each colony had different laws, different rules. Okay, so it says we're doing just fine things. England had a lot of other colonies besides those in America and plenty of other problems to deal with. So England had colonies all over the world at this time. You know, they had some in Africa, they had some in like Australia, New Zealand. So England basically had colonies throughout the world. That's why it's saying here they had other problems to deal with. The king and parliament didn't have much time to pay attention to the American colonies. By the mid 1700s, there were 13 colonies. Each colony had its own government. These little governments grew stronger and more used to being in control. When problems came up, the colonial government took care of things themselves. The colonists were on their own, making their own decisions, governing things they wanted to without much interference. Okay. So then it says a raw deal, but things got tough and the British government were looking for money. Great Britain, which now include England, Scotland, saw its colonies around the world as a source for profit. Colonies were a place to cut timber, grow crops, and cotton and coffee, and mine for valuable minerals. The king forced the colonies to sell these raw materials back to England at really cheap prices. People in England would use the materials to make finished products. But did the colonists get a bargain on these items because they provided the materials? No way. The king forced the colonists to buy the finished goods at extra high prices. So these colonies all over the world, like they were getting whatever, minerals, timber, whatever, they would put them on a boat, sell the raw materials to England, and then England would turn around and say if you needed something made out of metal, they would sell that back to you at a higher price. Or something made out of wood or something, they would sell it back to you at a higher price. Okay, so that was kind of the purpose of colonization. You'd have all these outposts all around the world, and you'd use those colonies for raw materials. Like the people would do all the work, and then they'd have to sell it back to England. Okay. So it says looking for a fast buck. That was only beginning. In the mid-1700s, Britons fought two expensive wars. Britain had taken out a lot of debt to pay for the war, so it went looking for ways to make money fast. Taxing American colonies seemed like a perfect idea. So in 1765, Britain passed the Stamp Act, which forced the colonists to put expensive tax stamps on all legal documents, as well as newspapers, calendars, and almanacs. The colonists had an answer for that. They quit buying British goods, but this boycott didn't work for long. Britain repealed the Stamp Act after 1 year, but things did not get better. So because England was in, or Great Britain was in wars around the world, as you guys know, wars are really expensive. So England was really running low on money. So they thought, well, we'll make the colonists pay for anything they made with paper. They put that stamp tax on it. So the colonists, anything they needed, they'd have to pay for. And it was a way of generating money for Great Britain. Okay. And you can see from bad to worse. So England basically, they kept coming, or Great Britain kept coming up with ways to tax the colonies. So it says as soon as the Stamp Act was gone, the British passed the Declaratory Act saying the colonies were dependent on the king and declaring that all laws passed in the colonies had no effect. If that weren't bad enough, Britain also passed the Townshend Revenue Act, taxing things it knew the colonists couldn't make for themselves, like paint, glass, paper, lead, and tea. Because we didn't have factories at that time, so everything was made in England and sold to the United States, so they would tax everything that we needed. As you can see, like paint, glass, paper, lead, and tea. The act also allowed British government workers to search people's houses and break down doors to seize items on the homeowner hadn't paid taxes on for. So they had soldiers over here at that time that go into your houses, look for those things. Then they did the Quartering Act in 1764 and 1765 and 1774. And that forced certain colonists to let British troops live in their houses. The soldiers didn't have to pay rent. Then in 1770, a serious laws cracked down on the rebellious activity in the Massachusetts colonies. Colonies called this the Intolerable Acts. As you can see, England just kept pushing the envelope. They started taxing more, making it more basically difficult to be free in the colonies. You know, having soldiers live in your house rent-free, eat your food. I mean, things are getting pretty bad. So, and you can see up here, this is the Boston Tea Party. So England sent a bunch of tea over to the colonies, and what the colonists did, they took all that tea and threw it in the Boston Harbor, and that was kind of the Boston Tea Party, and that was a big deal because the colonists was kind of like, we're not gonna pay for this tea. You can't tax us, and we're gonna throw it in the in the Boston Harbor. So, and you can see here, enough is enough. The colonists finally decided there's only one solution: self-government. So on July 4, 1776, the colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence, announcing the United States was free from Great Britain. It wasn't that easy, though. There's a small matter of fighting a war against Britain to make freedom real. When the Americans won the Revolutionary War, Britain lost all control of the colonies, and the United States of America was born. Okay. So that's just some background on kind of roughly how our country was formed. So the rest of this, these are just questions. So for example, phrases to know, unalienable rights. Those are rights that we're born with. So all you're going to do for this 1 through 6 is just match the letter to the word up here. And for part B, it basically, if we were in class, what it would do is we would, you would cut these things out and tell me what is the preamble, what are grievances, what are natural rights, and what are resolutions of independence. So you can just kind of look through those, look over those. Down here, there's some more fill in the blanks. So all this comes from the reading, you guys, and then there's some more down here. So you can certainly do what you want with this. This is just a little more to give you a better understanding, but you guys have a brief background on what, all those taxes led to the colonies saying enough is enough. We want our own freedom. It's not fair that the king is ruling us from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, England. So that gives you a little background on basically, how our country was founded. And we will go a little deeper in this as we progress through the next couple of weeks. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. We'll be back tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.